So most of us, we like did little league and we play like basketball and stuff in the park and stuff. And of course, most people aren't destined to be, making a living in the sports world. But me and Shug were talking. We're like, what job would you have if you could, besides being a player in the sports world? I'm gonna ask Shug first.
Yeah, so this question came across on Twitter, as most of the stuff we discuss. I like
Grandpa.
I like it because it makes you think.
Oh,
And
you have to hire a writer.
yeah, and like your first instinct, if you want to be in sports, you want to be like an athlete because you want to be an athlete because they get all the recognition, they get the money and all, the fame and all of that. So it really does get you thinking. And it's a lot of different, like if you really watch sports and you really understand like the background of it, there's so many different jobs and there's so many differences in the jobs and stuff like that. So there's like, the head coach, you could be an assistant coach, general manager, you could be the owner. But the one job like I thought about and I was like, what I would do is be the president or the vice president of the operations. You'd hear like VP or president of basketball operation, VP president of football operations, VP president of baseball operations, stuff like that. And I remember like growing up over the last like 10 years or so, I realized it seemed to me that like that position did basically the same thing as the GM. It wasn't until I realized that that wasn't the case. That like president of basketball, president of whatever sport operations, and a GM is like two different things. So I chose president of operations because what essentially you do. Like if you're the owner, like I'm gonna just talk about like the downside of like these positions of the other positions. If you're the owner, you own the team. Of course, you make a lot of money. You get to go to all of the games and basically like it's your toy and whatever, whatever. But you face a financial responsibility and you face like backlash from the public when your team doesn't do well. Blah 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 blah. As we've seen with like Jim Dolan and as we've seen, like I'm just going off of like the team owners, the owners of the teams I follow. Jim Dolan obviously gets like the most flack, but now you're seeing like John Mara and Steve Tisch, who are the co-owners of the Giants. Even though these are two owners that have overseen two Super Bowl wins, the recent history of the Giants, people are very critical towards them because of the product on the field. And then there's Hal Steinbrenner, who is somebody like most Yankee fans are critical of because his father was such a great owner. But remember, like George Steinbrenner, he also faced a lot of criticism in the late '80s and the '90s, early '90s as well.
Yeah,
When the team kind of had like a downturn.
there was a famous magazine cover of him dressed as George Washington that was like literally right before or right after they won '96. It was like it was tumultuous. I remember that.
Yeah, so it's rough being it's rough in our aspect being an owner. Not only that, but if your team is not doing well, like you face like the economic responsibilities. Like if the attendance is low, you're not making the sales, like you have to make payroll and stuff like that. So that's why I wouldn't want to be the owner. Then there's the general manager, who's the person that makes all the personnel decisions. They hire the coaches, they draft the players, they sign the players, they make the trades, blah 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 blah. But at the end of the day, it's a very like replaceable position.
Right.
And then there's a head coach. The head coach basically, like to me, they're in between a player because it's like you'd rather be the GM or you'd rather be the player. Nobody wants to be the coach. because the coaches, unless you're in college football, but what we're talking about specifically is professional sports. If you're a head coach, you're usually the first person where all the blame gets passed on to, and you're the first person let go. It's very few times you've ever seen a head coach basically be able to absolve, the misfortunes of the team. Case in point, a lot of people watched the Last Dance documentary over the summer about Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. And you saw that Jerry Krause, as bad as he was, and as no, the greatest player in the world didn't like him. The greatest coach in the history of basketball didn't like him, and somehow he outlasts both of them. I think about it, and I was just like, yo, president of so and so operations, you basically, if you have a hands off owner, because there are a lot of owners that are hands on, as you've seen with like Jerry Jones. Because Jerry Jones is basically like he doesn't have a GM, like he's the GM of the Cowboys, and he also owns the team. But since he's the owner, like he can't fire himself. But at the same time, he refuses to hire somebody else to do his job. But a lot of teams, what they do is the owner doesn't want to do the day to day stuff. A lot of times, like, owning the team is just like a hobby or a business investment. They're not into like the day to day businesses of it. So I thought about the president. Like the president is usually somebody. A lot of times, it's usually like a former player, a former coach, and they usually have a lot. They have a long leash because if you're a former player, a former coach, a lot of people, the public, looks upon you very well. That's why a lot of times when I see a lot of like job openings in the head coaching or the GM job, people they always look towards like a former player or former coach to take those jobs because they assume like the public will give those people a longer leash than somebody that they don't know. But if you're the president of operations, you're basically like the owner, but you're the owner without the financial responsibility, and you're usually the last person that the buck gets tossed to. There even is time where like a president they'll hire a GM. So you'll have you'll be making all the personnel decisions, or the personnel decisions have to go through you before getting approved.
Yeah.
If everything goes bad, like you could fire, you could trade players, you could release players, you could fire the coach, you could hire a new coach, you could hire a new GM, fire the GM, and stuff like that. So, and before long, like you're a lot richer. Sometimes, like the way I categorize the difference between the GM and a president of operations is it's like NBA 2K, their GM mode, where it's like when you first start, you're like a GM, but you have to do all of these tasks in order to not get fired that the owner gives you. But after a while, you gain enough credit that you could buy the team, but you still have the same responsibilities. And that's kind of like where it is in real life that you become like the president of operations.
Yeah, I feel you and everything, but I'd rather be like a local hero. I think, even though I'm not famous, like I'd rather even like be the guy. What I said as a joke was like the guy in charge of like the music. So I told Suge, I'll be like, oh, I want to be the guy who like chooses what song comes out, what song come plays when someone comes out.
Hmm.
But I didn't know the parameters changed. Where okay, I'm an ex player. I actually played already, so I'd rather be one of the guys who are like in like one of the in the booth, and like I wasn't that famous. It's just like one of those like characters that give my two my 2 cents and stuff, and then every time they would play my song, and I'd be like, all right, here we go. And I would like turn out there and be like, hey guys, like I'd be a simple man, like a Sam Malone. The whole thing with sports, that's my whole thing. Short and sweet. Short and sweet. You
Hmm.
know. Hopefully, it would be in either the important cities like Boston, New York, and Chicago. L.A. Okay, but that's it. I wouldn't want to be in like in Milwaukee and be like, oh yeah, he's the most famous person in Milwaukee, and some guy from New York shows up and he's like, who's that? I'm like, oh, you know what I mean?
Man, I would love any job in sports, but that would definitely be it. Being the president of like operations for a team, especially if it's a team that I like, because I know like I would try my best.